Saturday, May the 7th, 2022, Gary Numan returns to play Wembley for the first time since 1981. And boy, did they knock it out of the park. Let's talk about that in this video. Hi, and welcome to Piano and Keyboard Artist, where we discuss the artists related to pianos, keyboards, and synthesizers. If you're new to this channel and you're a Gary Numan fan, then welcome on board. And all I'm saying to you is, where have you been? If you're a Gary Numan fan, then this is certainly the channel you need to subscribe to now, with a wealth of Gary Numan content, including an interview with the great man himself and a lot more. But this video, we're going to focus especially on the Wembley gig, which I went to last Saturday. And boy, was I blown away. We all heard about the, his final gig in 1981 when he, retired and then spent all those years to, struggle to come back. And then for him to get back, to go full circle after all those years and to get to that level, let's just face it, it's not often that someone can fall as far as what Gary Numan did and then pick himself up, to the heights or even higher than he used to be. So this is really a remarkable story of victory. And as they say, the comeback is always greater than the setback. And as always, before we jump into the video, it is the section of the video where we give a shout out to our sponsor to help keep the lights on. There is no sponsor for this video, so I would like to draw your attention to my album, Dark Society, which has just been released. This is my long-awaited album that we've been working on for a long time. The video, the music video and everything are out. I'm very, very proud of it. It's available now in all digital stores, and you can pre-order the CD and vinyl as well. Links in the description below. With that out the way, let's jump into today's video. So it's about a year ago that I interviewed Gary Numan himself, and of course we were planning to interview him in person, but because of COVID and restrictions we had to settle for a Zoom interview. And I was very grateful for the opportunity. And indeed, we are looking at hopefully doing an in-person interview with Gary Numan, hopefully next year, if all things pan out correctly, because I want to do a very, very in-depth series, because he's doing the re-release of his 3 legacy albums, Exile, Sacrifice, and Pure. So those albums are being re-recorded and redone. So I want to do a really in-depth series on those albums, and hoping we can do another interview. But of course, fast forward to the present moment, his tour was delayed because obviously Intruder just came out, and because everyone's been locked down, it's only now that he's been able to tour. And can I just say, it was wonderful to be, it's the first live gig I've been, well, it's not the first live gig, but it's the first sort of major live gig I've been to since, the end of lockdown. It was just wonderful. And of course, this was a very memorable, a very emotional gig, because as we know, Gary Numan retired very early, jumping to fame very, very early. And then, of course, all the problems he had retiring from the business in 1981 and then spending all those years to try and get back to where he was. I did, of course, attend the Royal Albert Hall gig a few years ago, and that, of course, was a momentous gig. And this gig, to me, was really pretty much on that level. It was very epic and big. And if we look at the sort of tour that Numan is on at the moment, I mean, typically he plays venues, with capacities between 2,000, 4,000. Those are typically the kind of gigs he does. And there is a certain magic about gigs like that, because, you tend to be closer to the stage. But then, of course, there is always something magical about a gig this size. Of course, Wembley is iconic and every artist would want to play there, but few of us can, would ever get there. We can only dream. A very emotional gig, very good set list, total of 23 songs. And it was almost like a greatest hits celebration. Now, Gary Numan is quite outspoken about the fact that, he's not into nostalgia and things like that. He likes to, push his current music. He doesn't do nostalgia and things like that. But this gig was very, very well balanced. And indeed, when I interviewed him, I asked him, what is the challenge in doing a gig, and trying to please everyone? And he quite bluntly said, he doesn't care. He's going, this is the direction he's going. And if you, as a fan, want to stay back in 1979, you can stay there. We also joked how, he got in trouble with fans a while ago because he ridiculed, I think, the Joe the Waiter song. And Gary is, of course, a very honest person who often gets himself into trouble by being so honest. This gig was a very, very, very good selection of songs. As I say, almost like a greatest hits kind of, not nostalgia, but it was very, very well balanced. Remember the challenge of being an artist for 40 years and to try and, do a show that has about 20 songs and represent all of that in a way, whereas at the same time trying to keep your fans happy, the older fans, but also trying to promote a new album. It's very, very tricky. But in the 23-song setlist, which they did, he's done a very, very good job. So let's run through those songs and I'll give you my opinions. So the lights go down, the screens light up, and the pre-show music starts. The band move on one at a time. And then, of course, the great man comes on at the end and does his menacing thing. We go straight into the feature track of the latest album, which is Intruder. Dum, 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 dum. Richard Beasley hitting the crap out of those drums as he does. And I can listen to you scream. And it's a very... I love the way the Intruder song starts. It's just dum, 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 and then everything just goes quiet. I can listen to, and, just his voice coming in, and a great way to start a gig. And, the Intruder song, the actual single, it had mixed reviews from fans when it came out. I personally, when I heard the Intruder song the first time, it didn't sort of blow me away in the way that My Name Is Ruined did. But of course it grew on me and I really, really like it now. A great track to start a gig with and very, very explosive in typical Numan style. We'll then come on to the second song, Remind Me to Smile. Classic old school, remind me to smile. And it's a very good idea, I find, with gigs, to start off with a current song and then straight away as a second track, throw in one of your sort of legacy songs. I think where some bands kind of get it wrong, bands that have been going for a long time, is they start off a show playing let's say 3 or 4 songs from their new album. And I think Gary Numan's very experienced, as is his band, and he's been doing this for many years, so he knows exactly how to work out a set. And indeed, starting off with the feature track from the last album, and then straight away coming to something old, Remind Me to Smile. And of course the older songs have a sort of more light-hearted feel to them. Not light-hearted in the sense of pop, but they just have a familiarity to them. Remind Me to Smile, a legacy song and a fan favorite. We then went on to track 3, Halo. Does God bleed on the wood? So we moved on to a slightly more current, darker track, and then on to Metal, which of course is another legacy track. And of course, at that point, you've got that high string. And of course, it once again, bringing in one of these sort of older legacy songs, so earlier on into the set, brings a sort of sense of familiarity, especially to the older fans, and indeed the new fans enjoy it as well. And it just gets the roof going. These songs have such incredible energy, and that particular song, just that bass line, which is so simple, just the octaves, the boom, 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 boom. That along with the very direct, straight drumming from Richard Beasley and the simple lead keyboard line, it's an absolute winner. We then move straight from Metal into Ghost Nation, and Ghost Nation obviously being one of the feature tracks from the previous Savage album. Also a very, very powerful song. And I've said this before, Gary Numan has the rare ability where he's able to his new songs translate just as well as his old songs. And you sort of find this, the audience, obviously, based on audience reactions, of course, songs like Our Friends Electric and Cars, people always go insane about that because there is a certain nostalgia and memory to that, and people can probably relate it to a younger time. And that's what music's all about. It is an emotional thing, and it's how it relates to our personal lives. Okay, I'm getting very philosophical now, but certainly what I find is as the years progress, as the songs get older, the fans tend to like them more. So what I mean by that is, like Ghost Nation, when I saw him on his previous tour, it went down well, but it seemed to go down better now because people have had a few more years to get used to it. It's kind of like Friends, when you meet people, that's just the way we are as human beings. We become familiar, and time makes us love things more. Anyway, enough philosophy there. We then get The Gift, one of his newest songs, and with a guest singer, Gazelle Twin, who joined him on stage with some very, very hypnotic, beautiful Arabic-type vocals. And I don't know if that's the right, to me, they sound, it's that kind of Arabic, Middle Eastern kind of feel, which Numan does use a lot. And I think the first time I heard him using that kind of strongly Arabic kind of thing was in the song My Breathing, and indeed a lot of his music, especially in the more recent songs, do have this very strong Middle Eastern kind of vibe to them. And bringing Gazelle Twin onto this was great, as a special guest, and indeed he had a lot of special guests on here, as we'll go into. And obviously this was a very special gig, so I'm not sure. You can comment in the description below. When he's done the smaller gigs, I don't think Gazelle Twin would necessarily be on those shows with him. Her vocal would probably be on the backing track. I'm not sure about that. But of course, this was a very special gig, and he had loads of surprises and special guests. And the fact that nothing was announced was like, you'd just be there and these people would come on, you'd be like, oh my God. We then go straight into another classic. That is typical Numan, just the simplicity, the sort of droning left hand and the simplicity of those sort of high notes on the right-hand side. And I will be doing a video soon on Gary Numan, how he writes songs and how he structures them. And it's very fascinating, without going off track. When I interviewed his keyboard player, David Brooks said something very fascinating. He said, in all the years that he's played keyboards for Gary Numan, he said he's never ever played a chord, because Gary Numan's music is not made up of chords. It's made up of single melodies, almost like they did in the old orchestras. The parts were written, in one note. And I do want to do a video on that, because I have some fascinating insights on his music, which I'm sure you will find interesting. And because, there is nothing conventional about Numan, just the way he structures and puts things together. Numan himself has often said how he feels lucky, and he feels like he's not that musical. And he puts himself down a lot. I think we all know that you don't need to be able to sit down at a piano and play incredibly well. Whereas Gary's ability as a composer, it's all there, and the rest is history. But anyway, I will get into a lot more detail when I do that video. We then hear something that we've not heard in a long time, or at least I've not heard in a long time. Pure, from the 2000 Pure album, the opening track. I want to feel you hesitate. Wow, what a song. And also, the audience reacted really well to that song, because just as I said earlier, because that song's had time to really grow on people. What's it, 22 years? God, I'm shocked to think that the millennium was 22 years ago. Anyway. Great song. It went down very, very well. And I've not heard that song played live by Numan in many, many years. So it was very, very good to hear it again. Great, great song. We then go straight into an instrumental track called Resurrection, and then it's straight back to back. Well, Resurrection kind of forms like the intro to Down in the Park. And I was very happy to hear that because, when I interviewed Aid Fenton last year, I meant to ask him, but I forgot. I wanted to say, hey, Aid, look, man, no disrespect. I don't want to tell you what to do, but can we please have a new backing track for Down in the Park? Because, for the past 15 years or so, Down in the Park would always start like this. And whereas that's not bad, it's just that, it just becomes a little bit stale because you kind of like, okay, it's now we know it's coming. But indeed, when this track Resurrection started, it was like, wow, this sounds great. And then it went straight into Down in the Park. And hey, man, my wish has been fulfilled. It was great to hear that they've upgraded the backing track. And Down in the Park, what can I say? It's a Numan classic, an icon. And a really, really, really well put together piece of music, which I will go into a lot of detail when I do my Numan songwriting special. And, just looking at the keyboard parts now, shout out to David Brooks. David, I get really nervous when I watch you playing live, mate. And that's not because I don't have faith in you. It's just that, if we look at the interviews I've done with David Brooks, we all know that Gary Numan, if you go back to the Tubeway Army days, he had loads of keyboard players. He then typically, in the recent years had 2 keyboard players. And now, of course, David Brooks is having to handle everything by himself. So, when the gig started and they all walk on, and this is a huge stage, this Wembley, and everyone was like on a riser, and I see David getting up onto the riser, and he's got his keyboards there, and I just feel nervous for the guy because he's a great musician, but it's just like, oh my God, you are potentially having to do the parts of 2 keyboard players, and of course, some of the parts are on backing tracks, and David does as much as what he can with his own 2 hands, but it's still stressful because of the nature of this kind of music. It's not like jamming kind of music. It's not like rock and roll jamming. Every note is very iconic and very precise. And therefore, if you don't hit it right, it stands out. And just looking at those big screens on the side of the stage, every time, David would sometimes appear on one of those big screens and, the camera would zoom in and you could just see the concentration on his face. And I was like, so I'm not stressed for him, but it's just like, you've got all these people and this is such an important gig and it's being filmed and everything like that. And you're trying to concentrate. And but hey, man, what a gig. What a brilliant, brilliant performance. And, before we get into the rest of the set list here, we all know that Richard Beasley is leaving the gig or leaving the band after 29 years. Of course, people had been, asking what the reasons were. And of course, I don't think it's anything sinister. I just know that, Richard, he's been doing this for a long time now. I actually met Richard Beasley for the first time at the Little Finger gig. And, what a nice guy. Just really, really jolly, upbeat, friendly. And I think we helped him load his kit, his drum kit. We helped him load it back in the car because obviously the Little Finger gig doesn't have the budget of the Gary Numan gig. And I remember Richard being very grateful when we helped him load his gear back in his car. And we did joke about how different this is, as opposed to playing for Numan when you've got a road crew and everything. But so far as Richard Beasley's concerned, you could argue that Gary Numan is a solo artist and these are all just session musicians. However, it's not that easy because it's not only the musicality, but there's the camaraderie of being, together with someone in a band for 29 years. So Richard is going to be sorely missed. And I don't know who is replacing him on the drums, but he's got big shoes to fill. I'm gunning for him. But I just think that's going to be a very stressful thing because you know, because of the kind of legendary status that Richard has attained, you know, through the years, and rightfully so. So, Richie, we're sad to see you go, but hey man, life goes on. Right, let's jump back into the set list. We're straight into one of the featured tracks from one of his previous albums, Dead Sun Rising. You know, very hard-hitting, very sort of modern, contemporary Numan sound. So after Dead Sun Rising, we get Numan's daughters joining him on stage, the lovely Persia and Raven. And I felt really old when I saw Raven, because I remember 2004, I took my dad to see Gary Numan in I think it was a gig called The Garage in Hackney or something like that. It was 2004. And I remember we were standing in the queue, and I remember some of the band members walking past, but Gemma came walking and she was pushing a pram. I think Raven was just born. And I remember Gemma having, I'm sure she had this red, I think it was red or blonde hair anyway. You know, she's very trendy and funky. And I remember her coming with the pram, and I remember walking up to him saying, "Oh, do you mind?" And I looked in, and I remember taking a photo of her and Raven, and I remember Raven was just a baby, just a newborn, and a newborn. Sorry, that was bad. A newborn, and I wish I could find the photo. Anyway, fast forward to today, present time, just standing there and seeing this grown woman on the stage and thinking, oh my God, I feel so old. Also, with Persia being up there as well, Persia is now taller, rocking a very, very trendy kind of Debbie Harry blondie kind of hairstyle. Love the vibe. And of course, when I interviewed Numan last year, we joked about this, because I said to him, you know, as I said, when My Name Is Ruin came out and you first brought, you know, Persia out onto the stage, she was about this high. And then a year later, when I saw in Royal Albert Hall, she was this high, you know. And of course, fast forward to today, they're basically grown women. So anyway, going off topic slightly, but it did make me feel bloody old. Is the World Enough ends, and of course, Persia walks off, Raven remains there, and we hear boom, 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 boom. Every Day I Die. I've always loved this song, and also, you know, one of the sort of legacy songs, goes down really well. Out of all the Numan gigs I've been to live, I've never heard him perform this one live. I mean, I know he's played this live many times, but certainly at none of the gigs that I've been to. So I was really happy to hear it there. And I just love the song, the simplicity of the boom, 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 and the problems of need, you know, that chromatic sort of melody. And it's a very quirky, slightly awkward song, and it always reminded me of the, you know, the Our Friends Electric. So it is such a Numan song. Absolutely love it, and it was great to hear it live for the first time ever for me personally. Persia then comes back to join them, and they do A Black Sun, and then of course Raven walks off this time, leaving Persia. And they do My Name Is Ruin. And of course, it was, you know, it was such a treat to see, you know, Persia performing with her dad for the first time, you know, in the Shepherd's Bush Empire, I think, and then at the Royal Albert Hall. But of course, she can't come on tour with him every time because, you know, she was in school and stuff. So very often in those gigs, her vocal will be on the backing track. But certainly in big iconic gigs like this one, Gary did, you know, probably insist that they come along. We're then on to Cars, which of course, Showstopper. And Gary jokes about how he always has to sort of, you know, throw that song in, and it's often been said by Gary as well that you know, Cars is quite a not a difficult song, but in the sense that, you know, he said it's only got a bit of singing in the beginning and the rest of it's just instrumental stuff. But I think what he does now is he goes up on the rise and he's got his keyboard there, and he plays a couple of notes just for the showmanship. We're then straight into another legacy classic, Me, I Disconnect From You. And of course, on this song, they were joined on stage by Tim, who used to be the bassist. Also, a song like this, I believe these songs are played without backing tracks, meaning they just played, you know, with a live band and no click track, as far as I'm aware. Correct me if I'm wrong. And it does mean that in a song like this, they really have the ability to kind of just rock out, and it comes across really, really well. Straight on then to Love, Hurt, Bleed, The Chosen, and he ended the set before he went to the encore with We Are Glass, another legacy classic. Another stomper, and always goes down really well. Encore, walk off the stage. But we know they're not finished because they've got to come back and do some of the big ones. Gary's not very chatty in gigs, but I found in recent gigs he does sort of take a little bit more time to talk to the audience. And of course, he's very soft-spoken, so everyone has to kind of quieten down. And he's got that kind of giggle. Thank you very much. And he's got that like. I love his voice. He always sounds like a. Always said he always sounds like a boy whose voice, like a teenage boy whose voice is breaking. Goes, thank you very much. He does that laugh. So incredibly humble guy. And then of course he picked up his acoustic guitar, and we knew what was coming. Joe the waiter, and that just made everyone smile, and it made me laugh because I know what he I know what he said about that song. He doesn't hate it, but it's kind of like, it's kind of in the past. But once again, he's showing great respect by playing that for the fans. He's then joined on stage by two legends from the old lineup. Russell and Chris came on. Chris playing the is it a violin? It's kind of like some kind of violin with a pickup. Correct me if I'm wrong. And Russell on, just sort of like a distortion rhythm guitar to play the song Me. And of course, that song's been sampled and, by many, it's just a great song and very, very, iconic. And it was just so funny as it started. I just got the vibe that something was wrong because Gary went onto the riser behind his keyboard and it started and I went, dur, dur, dur. So it was funny and it was clear that something had gone wrong. But, just like there's a saying in show business, which is keep calm and carry on. Just carry on. Most people won't notice. But I think they'd gone past that point. So Gary eventually just went, wait, stop. And he's got like that funny laugh. He went, oh, for fuck's sakes. I've only been doing this for 40 years, which was funny. And, it's always great to see, people you look up to just being human. Numan being human. And, no harm done. They started again and the song went down really well. And I just love the violin and the vibe of that. The vibe of some of those old songs is incredible. It's just, and they never sound dated. The thing about Numan's music is, a lot of it was so, ahead of its time. And so just really sort of like timeless. So when you hear those songs like Me and some of those older songs, when you're listening to them now, they don't sound dated because they're so sort of timeless. So they, I think we who've been around longer will know that they're older songs. But, if you put someone younger there, they'd be like, wow, this is amazing. You can't sort of, these songs aren't frozen in time. You can't attach them to a certain time because they are just so timeless. Second last song, which is always one of the big ones, which has become a really sort of Numan type sort of like anthem these days, is Prayer for the Unborn. Now, that version of Prayer for the Unborn is the version that he's been, doing for many, many years. It's not the exact version that was from the 2000 Pure album. I remember just as Pure came out, there was a remix compilation that came out after that. And this version that he does now was on that. So, and he's really adopted that as the sort of definitive version that he uses live every time. And I forget what it was called. But yeah, that has kind of like become a Numan anthem, that particular one. But there are many. And of course, he finished the, if you're sitting there or you're standing at the gig, then okay, we're 22 songs in, and he hasn't done Our Friends Electric. Well, he's going to do it now. And of course, ended on a high. And we all know what's coming. It's all very predictable because we all know we're all going to go, whoa, 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 you know, and that's part of the celebration. And of course, I was right in the front. And of course, when I turned around, just seeing, you know, because when you're right in, I was right in the front at the barriers. And of course, when you turn around, you realize there's like, you know, 10,000 people behind you. I don't know what, I think the capacity of that venue is 12,000. But it was pretty full. I don't think it was sold out, but it was pretty damn full. If you turned and you looked, you'd see that. And you know, it was a great light show. I was amazed by the quality of the projections, the screens. The lighting was incredible. Great lasers and everything. This was just a tick the box show, and I think there was a lot of pressure on the band, obviously, you know, when you're doing something like this, because you know, you go on tour and you do these little venues, and of course you put your heart and soul into every performance, as Gary does. You know, nothing's done half-hearted. He's very intensely, I've never been at a show where I felt he was just going through the motions. He's very, very intensely passionate about what he does. But then, of course, getting to something like this, which you know is going to be big, and, you know, all that pressure that goes with that, the fact that it's being filmed and everything like that adds to it. But, you know, they pulled it off really, really well. And, you know, I walked out there very happy. And Numan himself got quite emotional, you know, when he was doing his talking and stuff. He's a very humble guy. And certainly right at the end of our Friends Electric, when he's got that monologue. So now I'm alone. Now I can think of myself. The second time round, so I had no reasons for the phone calls and smiles, blah blah blah. And the very last sentence of that is, "You see, this means everything to me." And when he said that, you can watch it in the recording when it comes out or on YouTube. When he says that, "You see, this means everything to me," his voice broke, like, "You see, this means everything to me." Like, it's like he was about to start crying. And I just think it was very emotional, and we all felt that. So great gig. Really, really enjoyed it. I dragged my friend and mix engineer Andy Marlowe along, and my friend Carla, who's one of my admins on my Facebook group. Dragged them along, and they loved it. Converted fans. And indeed, every time I've been to a Numan gig, I always tend to drag someone along, because I don't like to go to gigs by myself. And I usually end up having to buy the tickets and, you know, bring people along and just try and convert them. And fortunately, everyone I've brought to a Numan gig has been converted, Numanized, I suppose. And hey, man, this video has been a lot longer than I wanted it to be, but I hope you've enjoyed it. Please leave your comments in the description below. Were you at the gig? Reach out to me. Which gig are you going to? I know he's just he's now going to be going to Nottingham and then Leicester, and he's kind of working his way up North England, and then he'll go to, I think, Scotland, Ireland, and then he's on to Europe and then back onto America. I believe this is the point where Richard Beasley jumps off and the new drummer takes over. I haven't done research into who the new drummer is, but I wish him well, and I'm sure we're going to all welcome him with open arms. No pressure. They're big boots to fill, filling the boots of Mr. Beasley. And we, of course, wish Richard all the best, you know, with his future endeavors. That's it, my friends. Let me know which gig you're going to. Anything you want to say about this video, anything Gary Numan related, just let me know in the comments there below. And look out for the video coming soon where I'm going to talk about how Gary Numan puts his songs together, or at least how I understand he puts his songs together. I'm not going to assume I know what goes on in Gary Numan's mind. Thank you so much. Please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Join this fabulous community. Lots of love, and I will see you on the next video. Be safe. Adios.